I don't segment.
Yeah.
No, I don't segment my art from my life. I try to live every day with an eye to creativity on every level. Because I think, well, to quote another of my favorite people, is Oscar, excuse me, Oscar Wilde, who said, "Art is a way of living, not a thing." And that really hit home to me when I heard that maybe 50 years ago, 40 years ago, because it is. I think everything should be looked at with a creative eye and with joy. I think creativity is, to me, sort of synonymous with joy and love. So I try to look at everything that way, and I try to appreciate everything. I'm just trying to be a sponge in this life. I don't know how much longer I have to live, and I don't know what's going to happen to the world either, like tomorrow. So to me, it's important to live every moment as fully as possible. Every time my feet hit the ground, I'm thanking God for that day, and I'm like, I'm not going to waste it, and I'm going to do as much as I can to incorporate any influence that I see that strikes me as worthy into anything that I do, and so everything that I do. So
Yeah,
that's what I do.
it makes perfect sense. I had Watson Atkinson on the podcast, first show this year in 2014, and he's I would consider him somewhat of a visionary artist. He uses all those different. He is entrenched. Art is entrenched in his life, and
Right.
and much more than some of us. Some of us kind of weave in and out, or some people weave in and out of those artistic or influential times in their lives. He's entrenched in it, and you see that come through in his work. It's structured in the basics of tattooing that make a good tattoo, but it has some sort of other dynamic to it that comes through because he's using those fundamentals, but he's pushing the limits because he's drawing from all these you know, different art forms, I guess, life, which is pretty cool. I was really struck by his work initially when I first met him, and his more what people might consider his more fine art is it's incredible. It's really incredible stuff. Are there any artists out there that you in your travels that you've seen, or anybody? I mean, the world's open to us nowadays on Instagram that
Right.
have blown your mind or just been. Uh,
Well, I wanted to go back to what we were talking about, though, about community and making all of these little art, where you are and making art happen, and making that like Berlin. That's the thing that appeals to me about Austin.
yeah,
Everybody in Austin has a backyard that's decorated with Christmas lights. They have picnic tables back there. They're drinking beer. They've got a mandolin player. They're making music. They're singing and creating and writing and interacting. And it's everybody's a friend, and that's the main appeal to me of why I live in Austin, because it's a nonstop city of that. It's like America's Berlin in a way. Um, I was doing a tattoo the other day on someone in my Austin shop, and another client that I had worked on who is a musician. Everybody's a musician. He came by with a mandolin and played a mandolin concert for us. He's recorded. He has CDs and everything. So he's not practicing, and he just entertained us all afternoon with his mandolin playing, and it was heavenly. It was bliss. So that's the kind of environment I'm trying to create in my shop as well. There are so many artists. I mean, if you're going to talk about tattoo artists, there are legions, um, and painterly people. I don't really think of any. I don't know. I still look at the grandmasters basically as my favorite, um, and I'm not really. Um, I don't know who to say,
yeah,
one person or another, that would be more of an influence to me. I think Robert Williams certainly is somebody that I admire a lot for the complexity and the layering of his intelligence. Um, but as far as tattooing is concerned, I would want to say that there are very few people who develop their own style. And there's a kid, Michael Cortez, in California, who has developed absolutely his own style of tattooing. And I just want to give him a shout out because I think his Kortez, he's really young and he's developed this amazing style of tattooing that's just different than everything that you see. And so I would mention his name for sure.
Yeah, we'll have to take a look at it. Isn't it wonderful that we can find those little gems in the mass that is our industry now? You can still find these little gems within our communities, and you can find those all over.
Yeah.
In Berlin, in Austin, in New York, in China, wherever, there are going to be those folks that are just have a ridiculous amount of talent that take to tattooing or whatever art that they're doing, and it explodes out of them, and that's great. I love the connectivity, and I love the the ability to hear a name like that. And after we're off this podcast, I'll go check him out, and I can go right to Instagram, or I can go right to Facebook, I can go right to the internet, and I can have a hundred of his tattoos right in front of me, as opposed to back a handful of years ago.
Right.
I heard about a guy. The only reason I heard about him is because he had one picture in a magazine.
Right.
And I'm hoping to get by his shop so I can take a look at his portfolio next time I'm out wherever he's at.
Right.
Or at a convention, you get to see them. How
Right.
much different is that nowadays, that we have this ability to just communicate and be connected?
Yeah, God bless the internet. God bless Google. God bless Twitter. They're my lifeline for so much. There's another kid too, Sailor Mark, Marc, that is out of Portugal and also Holland. And I had the great opportunity of working with him in Rotterdam. And then I invited him to Austin. And because he doesn't have a name, he didn't have a lot of clients in Austin. So he and his girlfriend, Moira, went on a Western U.S. walkabout, which is great. They, travel and had a great time, fell in love. But if you get a chance to look at his work, it's amazing. Sailor Mark out of Portugal.
Yeah, I definitely will. I'll take a look at those. You've worked over your career. You've worked with a lot of different people, and I remember you telling me a story when we were hanging out in San Francisco of something about when you were with Paul Rogers and the acrobatics he was doing in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Tell me that story again.
One of my fondest memories of Paul. I loved Paul. There are some really, really great, sweet people in this business, despite all of the criminal backgrounds and hard stuff that's going on, But Paul and I went swimming. This was back in 1976, I guess, maybe, or 75. And Paul came over to hang out with Michael Malone and me, and so one of the things that everybody who comes to Hawaii likes to do is have a little tour, and I love to be a tour guide. So I was a dancer at the time, so I was built and a surfer. So I was built like the proverbial brick outhouse, and I had a bright pink bikini that I wore all the time, and so I took Paul to Waimea Falls. Now, Waimea Falls is a little secluded. There's a big pond at the base of it, of course, because the falls come down and feed this pond. And you have to drive up or take a bus up about a quarter of a mile away from the falls and the pond, and then you have to walk the remaining distance. So, but at that time, it was still fairly unknown as far as a tourist destination. Now it's a big park and it's all commercialized and everything's horrible. It's not safe. But when we were there was no one else there. So we're swimming around in this pond up to our necks, swimming, having a great time. And a tour bus load of people had pulled up and they had made the trek up to the pond to look at the falls. And they're all taking pictures, at the falls of everything. And I kind of wanted to get out of the water at that point in time, so I got out. Well, all of a sudden, all the cameras, especially the men, are pointing at me. So they're not looking at the falls so much anymore. So they're clicking pictures of this Hawaiian, tanned, bikini clad, surf girl. And so Paul, who was in an advanced age, probably 75 or so at that time, decided that he was through swimming too. So he got out of the water. But Paul was tattooed from his neck to his toes, so he was black, solid black. All of us, and he was thin, So all of a sudden there's this old tattooed man standing next to me, and Paul decides he's going to do a little show. So Paul, having been in the circus for so many years and staying fit as an acrobat, as a juggler and so forth, he got on his hands and he walked around the circumference of the pond on his hands all the way around. And I was going, hello, like the circus girl, I'm like presenting him, running around, pointing him out we put on a little show for these tourists. So somewhere in some Middle America or Japanese household, there are a few photos of me, presenting Paul Rogers on his hands as he's walking around the circumference of Waimea Falls, completely tattooed, and it was great. It was a great moment.
Was he like that? Was he kind of a prankster or
Yeah. Paul loved a good joke. Paul Paul was just so sweet, and he loved to. He was very humble, and he wasn't, arrogant, or, he was just very sharing. And, he knew what he was. He knew how a moment, and would grab it and use it for a joke, for a laugh.
Yeah, that's great. It's, you were just out at Columbia University. You showed Tattoo Nation and gave a talk.
I did.
You've been doing more lecturing?
Periodically, when the opportunity arises. I think I want to become a little more known for this now. I have this lecture called From Voodoo to Vogue, which I have developed over the past 10 years or 15 years. And it's the more that I learn about the history of tattooing, the more real it becomes, the deeper it goes. And it's phenomenal, the information that I've found. I presented this at a class for the Masters of Fine Arts class at Columbia, and they had presented it in a gallery/theater where I walked in, and there were all these gigantic photographs of me, and then they had taken quotes out of my things that I say and printed them on clothing, like leather jackets with spikes all over them, and like punk clothes, really cool stuff. And then they took a photograph of my back, which is a Polynesian tribal bodysuit by Trevor Marshall, and had printed silkscreen that on cowhides. So it looked like I had been skinned, kind of. It was really, and then printed T-shirts with my image on it, really impressive. And so it ran for 6 hours. I did my lecture for, I don't know, first it was a meet and greet where I just babbled like I am now. And then it was the lecture, which was really interesting for these people. And then, because they asked me lots of questions. And then we showed Tattoo Nation. We ordered pizza. They brought tequila. By the time I was done, I was drunk on my butt. But we had a great time.